Hello, everybody. This is Logan Entertainment, and today joining me is andyware 309. So say hello, Andy. Or Andy,
Hi
anywhere.
guys. I'm
Hello.
uh, I'm Andy Weir. You guys might remember me as Sergeant Andy Free on here.
Alrighty. So it's good to have you here, Anywhere, or is it Andyware?
Andy Weir.
Okay, Andyware. Okay, just double checking. So today we're going to be talking about. We're going to give our opinions and thoughts on Secret of the Mimic before it releases. So, Andy, tell me, what do you think of Secret of the Mimic?
I honestly think Secret of the Mimic's going to be amazing. Like Security Breach, they absolutely nailed it with the Ruin DLC. Well, I understand this is going to take place before the events of Security Breach, so I'm actually interested to see where is this story going to go. Like, are we gonna see the origins of the characters and whatnot, or is this gonna be like a whole different story entirely?
Right. I think Secret of the Mimic is going to be interesting. I definitely think that with the Ruin DLC for Security Breach, I think with Security Breach itself, I will admit I did enjoy the game, but at the same time, I will definitely admit that the story to it definitely could have been better. But I think with the Ruin DLC and given what we're shown with the Mimic, I do think Security Breach originally was supposed to be written as building up to the Mimic, but with how the story was handled, it kind of felt like it didn't necessarily build up to a whole lot, but at least but the clues were there. It's just how the story was written that kind of made it convoluted. But yes, with like you said with Secret of the Mimic, it's going to take place before everything, which is been a while since we've had a FNAF prequel that has gone way back in the past. So I definitely think that Secret of the Mimic is a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, this is gonna take place before the Fredbear's thing, so maybe we'll get to see like the origins of Fredbear and how all that started. That's my guessing on what's going on here.
It is quite possible, and a lot of people have pointed out with that, or some people would probably say that Fazbear Entertainment's creation was retconned. However, I don't necessarily think that's the case because of the Fazbear tokens that we collect in the first Help Wanted, which shows us, which was first revealed in First Help Wanted, where it says Freddy Fazbear's Pizza since 1983. So what I think is that is referring to the pizzeria itself, not like Fazbear Entertainment as a business.
Really, I thought that was Fredbear's, like Freddy's, no. Fredbear's came before Freddy's.
I think it did, but it's if you think about it, if Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it's quite possible that either Fredbear's Family Diner closed and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened the same year, or they both coexisted at the same year. It's probably one of those possibilities.
Well, I can think maybe William and Henry decided to go their own separate ways. That's my guess.
That is a possibility, but there isn't really a whole lot to go off of to say that they did. So it could be just the case that maybe Freddy Fazbear's Pizza coexisted with Fredbear's, or that it just happened to open the same year that Fredbear's closed. Then Freddy Fazbear's Pizza opened during the same year, but it's kind of hard to say exactly.
I see what you're saying.
But yes, with Secret of the Mimic, especially with giving with what it's implying to us is that the mimic or the idea of the mimic was a thing in the past, and it's just been I do love the idea and implications of something that's been around for a long time and it's just hiding and you have to look to see it, especially with the previous FNAF games. A lot of people say, oh, the paper pal from FNAF 2, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is the mimic. So I could definitely see the point that people are making with how the paper pal looks similar to Jackie, but I think it's more so just that modern FNAF is kind of just clarifying some things, so they're kind of making the connections from the past, so that way it looks like it makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I kind of get that.
As for the whole
I mean,
mimic
I've been
thing,
studying the I've been studying Fnaf as long as I can remember. Like when I first heard about like the other games, I've like gotten confused with the story because like it goes like back and forth in the timeline. So I just kind of wonder like hmm about like multiple theories. First, we got like different versions of the endoskeletons, and then like maybe this is some way of like Fazbear Entertainment's like trying to get more like advanced technology into the animatronics.
right? I do genuinely think that with stuff like with technology, it's very interesting to how with FNAF 2 taking place in the late 80s, with the toy animatronics having this super advanced software. It usually when it comes to like science fiction stuff, because it's like with FNAF going kind of, FNAF kind of used to be more into like the supernatural, but eventually it kind of just went into the whole science fiction, which I honestly don't have an issue with, because you can't really use much with the whole supernatural bit. So I can understand why Scott went into the route of science fiction, because it does really seem to help to kind of branch things out, make it a little more interesting, especially with the whole thing with Remnant.
Makes total sense.
I think with Secret of the Mimic, we're probably going to maybe, and especially with the teasers that we've been getting that's building up to it. I really love how Steelwool did that. So basically, Edwin Murray is someone who had his own business and created his own stuff while also having his very own workshop. I think it's very interesting that even with the commercials talking about stay up latte or and stuff like that, I definitely think how it's interesting that these certain inventions that he's had from the past seem to line up perfectly with what we know about the mimic, with the coat rack having the capability of extending and be making its limbs basically longer and shorter, just so it can be able, just how the mimic can be able to fit in every costume. The latte machine observing and learning, kind of like the mimic one's program, and etc. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, I do think Edwin kind of made all that. Well, I do have one theory about like what exactly could have happened to Edwin. So I do think maybe William like maybe he got jealous of Edwin like making all these inventions, and maybe William just wanted Edwin out of the picture. So I do think maybe William like must have lacked him, like, and he just wanted Edwin out of the picture. Well, that's my theory.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as a possibility, especially with our player character. It's like with us being supposed to be playing as a Fazbear technician who came in to try to retrieve the mimic. It's hard to say exactly to who our player character is. It could just be a random employee, or some people think it might be Henry. Some people think it might be William. But I think a lot of it is a possibility. But at the same time, there's not really a whole lot of evidence for us to try to make any connections. Plus, it's like we just know that he's a Fazbear technician who came in to try and retrieve the mimic, and we're by ourselves trying to retrieve it. So it's quite possible that we could get clues in the game to tell us who our player character is, or we're just playing as a random technician.
Well, I do think we're either playing as either Cassie's dad or Cassie's grandfather, because Cassie did mention in the Ruin DLC that her dad works as a technician for Fazbear Entertainment. So maybe, like, we could be either playing as Cassie's dad or Cassie's grandfather, because it kind of makes sense that, maybe his grandfather or dad worked for Fazbear Entertainment, and maybe they just didn't bother telling Cassie about it.
Yeah, I can see that as a possibility, but from a logical standpoint, I think that Cassie's dad being the technician in Secret of the Mimic is a bit of a stretch, because if Cassie's dad was the technician in Secret of the Mimic, he would have to be at least in his 20s to be able to have a job, and he would have to be decently young enough to still have a kid when the Pizzaplex was a thing. So he would So if Cassie's dad was in Secret of the Mimic, then that would mean that he would probably be like in his late 60s, early late 50s. I mean, he'd be pretty old. So I think it's more of a possibility that maybe we are playing as maybe Cassie's grandfather, but you never know.
Well, I can see what you're saying there because yeah, I mean, Security Breach does like take place like after the events of like the original FNAF trilogy. It looks like.
Yeah, just basically after everything. So I do think it's interesting that, especially with character, and while on the topic of characters, I think when it comes to Music Man, we're getting introduced to this older version of him. I think it was Orchestra Maestro Man or something is like this.
Oh, those mission-looking guys.
I I think so. So I think that's his name, like Maestro Man or something. He's like this older version of DJ Music Man, but he's more looks like he's a maestro and he has a lot of different stuff. He's basically like huge like DJ Music Man's just less advanced. So I think that's interesting for the idea that Music Man was a thing for a long time. But the interesting thing that I think is that stands out to me is that Music Man, we first saw a version of Music Man, a Pizzeria Simulator, and he has this giant speaker on his chest, just like the Fun Times have. And it's interesting to me that maybe when Fazbear Entertainment got rebranded, they ended up taking William's idea of Music Man and also took Edwin's idea from Maestro Man and they created DJ Music Man.
Interesting.
And it's just interesting because it's like with Maestro Man, he's literally just this old school version of DJ Music Man, but he's just very. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I just think it's interesting that Edwin just has this giant robot. And it makes you think, is that what DJ Music Man used to look like? Or is that just something that Edwin had and then Fazbear was like, oh, we can take this and maybe fix it up to look more modern? It's like, is it the original? Are they both the same or are they just different animatronics? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So, do you have anything else that you were curious about with Secret of the Mimic?
I mean, I'm not sure if we're gonna see those other colored of the that mushroom character, those maestro guys. Maybe they're gonna be like enemies as well in like some other area.
Oh, right, the Music Men wind-up toys.
Yeah, I wonder if they're gonna be like enemies or for like another area. Because
Uh,
I think the blue one as an animatronic in the trailer, and we've seen like mini versions just in like mini form. So I wonder if we're gonna see them in like big animatronic form.
that is interesting because we know they exist in Security Breach as well as Ruin, but it's even in Security Breach, it describes them at these wind-up Music Men prototypes. So it's like, what if Edwin planned on creating merchandise off of the Maestro Man, but he kind of changed them up a little? So it's like, maybe that's why they're prototypes. They're just old school toys that just never got to the public, or maybe they were released and they just never worked out or something. I just think it's like the minor details. Even with Security Breach, like as I said, I will give Security Breach the benefit of the doubt with its storytelling, like with environmental storytelling, but with its story itself, I will definitely, as I said, will admit it could have been better.
Hmm. I would also like to say that it's kind of interesting. Like this is going to be like the first FNAF game that we never see Freddy himself or the others in it.
Yeah, that is true. But I think the big thing about it is we might see them, but not like as animatronics. We'll probably see them as like maybe mascot costumes.
Like props and something, yeah.
Probably. I mean, we've seen like posters and stuff of Fredbear's Family Diner, and even like a poster saying that's coming soon. It was like Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, I think.
I mean, if they're like if they're trying to do something different, I see what they're trying to achieve there.
Oh yeah, of course. And I think with Five Nights at Freddy's, it's like it's. I always thought when it comes to Five Nights at Freddy's, it wasn't. It's technically yes, it centers around characters like Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, the classic characters. But if you actually look into it, it's just these types of characters that are in this universe that's centered around tragedy, loss, suffering, death, and all that. So it's like Freddy and his friends are just kind of like there, and especially with marketing strategy, because it's like with Secret of the Mimic, it's like, are we gonna do this like in one night, or is it gonna be 5 nights? Like, how exactly would that work when it's called Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic?
I mean, unless they're trying to like pull off a similar story to like Security Breach, where it's like a whole like thing inside of the Pizzaplex. I do like on how it's like it's free roam again instead of just sitting in a room and whatever,
Yeah,
just
and
sitting in a
yeah,
room and
I
defending.
definitely agree. I definitely agree with that. I think FNAF definitely evolved in a good way because it's like you can't go wrong with the classic gameplay, but it's like when you think about it, FNAF 1, 2, and 3, and especially 4, kind of followed the same formula of like sitting in one place, going between rooms and stuff like that. But I think like each and every game slowly got better and better because it's like you can't necessarily say that the formula is bad, but it's like in a sense to where you can enjoy it. And I genuinely think that with Sister Location, I think that's when Five Nights at Freddy's did pretty good with the gameplay, especially with how Scott did it, because it's like it still uses a similar formula, but instead of staying in one place, you actually interact with the environment, you move around, and then Pizzeria Simulator completely takes away the whole midnight to 6 a.m. thing. So it's like you can't wait until the hour is up. You just have to survive long enough to finish what you got to do. Ultimate Custom Night is kind of like the final ish game that uses that style. Then we have Help Wanted, who that kind of reuses that style, but kind of expands. And I think that with FNAF getting into this modern era, I think it did a pretty good job with expanding the gameplay so it just doesn't stick with the typical formula.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I mean, I do like on how like they're doing stuff different for like each game. So I do wonder if we're gonna see like William Afton in person as well, because I mean, we never see William Afton. What exactly does he look like other than being inside of the suit? So I do wonder if we're gonna see like William Afton in like person before he gets like in the suit.
Yeah, I that is something interesting about William because it's like even with his character, I've always wondered with him being a villain. I think he's a pretty cool villain because it's like this guy is almost like your stereotypical businessman where it's like he cares more about his work more than the well-being of others, and he will do whatever it takes to complete his work even if it means the expense of other people. And but one thing that always bothered me about William is like especially with how he's written, with a lot of people thinking, "Oh, he's just this monster that just never cared about his kids." It kind of makes you wonder why. Why is it that William turned into a monster? Was it tragedy? Was it like was it trauma? It's like it kind of left it out, but I think what makes William such a great villain is that not every villain can have necessarily a tragic backstory to make him the way that they are.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Excuse me, I just drank some water. My throat was getting dry.
That's right, you're good. Sorry, man.
Yeah. Like I said with William, so when it comes to William, he's just one of those villains, especially with Steel Wool when they mentioned, "Oh, we want to try to create this sympathetic villain." If you think about it, I think they're referring to the Mimic.
Yeah.
Because it's like I honestly think William is worse than the Mimic, not like worse as in bad, just worse as in villain wise. Because it's like with William, this man had everything, and yet he ruined all of it for his own, just because he wanted something so bad, which was immortality, I believe. And at the end of the day, he lost everything just because he wanted something. And it's with the Mimic. The Mimic is kind of a victim because it's like it's not that the Mimic is necessarily at fault. It's just an AI that's very rudimentary and is not really specific with its protocols, but like any good robot, it follows its programming whether or not it's good or evil.
I see.
And it really does make you think. Because like with the Mimic, it's not like it knows better to know the difference between right and wrong, but it's like with William, he's a person and he would know the difference between right and wrong. He just chose not to be a good person and he just became a monster, just like he is now we all know and love today. And with the Mimic, it's just this mindless AI that has a specific protocol and it will do anything to fulfill it. Like I said, whether or not it's a good or evil intention.
Hmm.
And I think with like AI, you could argue that maybe the Mimic is just like this exaggerated version of Chat GPT or something.
More like a strange version of the puppet.
Yeah, maybe like that. So I think with modern FNAF, it's more like it's a warning to us with how AI is, because it's like we definitely I will definitely admit when this whole AI thing was starting to become a thing where it started writing like people, mimicking voices, and taking jobs from others. It's like you could argue that the Mimic is quite similar to like the AI that we have today in real life, with Chat GPT mimicking writers, AI that can replicate people's voices somewhat perfectly, but pretty good to where it's hard to tell the difference and stuff like that. So it's like you could say the Mimic from FNAF is just this exaggerated version of what happens when AI gets out of hand.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Because yeah, for one example, the Mimic was pretending to be Gregory throughout the Ruin DLC. Because when I first saw this for myself, I honestly thought this was actually Gregory, and it turns out it's just the Mimic pretending to be him.
I honestly kind of knew the Gregory was the Mimic from the get go, because it's like some of the voice line. The interesting thing about Ruin, how it kind of hints that the Gregory that we hear in the walkie isn't him, because there's some voice lines that are literally copied and pasted from the base game Security Breach, but there's also newer voice lines that we've never heard Gregory say. So it's like at the end of the day, not only is the Mimic capable of copying other people's voices, it can also recreate new voice lines for itself, just with samples of using his voice.
Yeah. Well, when I first heard about Ruin, when I first saw watch people play it, I never played Ruin for myself. I just watched people play it. So I was like, huh, I wonder what Gregory is doing there in the first place. But it turns out Cassie got tricked.
Yeah, I definitely think Ruin was this pinnacle, this big moment in Security Breach, because I think what makes Security Breach interesting is that it's the first FNAF game that's free roam, but now Secret of the Mimic is going to be the third. So I think with Ruin, it definitely helped with fixing what Security Breach was lacking.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I wonder if we're going to use security cameras in that game too, just like in Security Breach.
Maybe. I mean, we might. And I'm interested to see, because it's like with Secret of the Mimic, I'm interested to see how it's going to pan out, especially with how it ends. That's one of the things that I'm interested in. And a lot of people, and even with one of the executives at Steelwool, when they were being in an interview with Daco, they said that it would probably take maybe 8 to 10 hours to beat the base game itself, but the completionist would probably maybe take an entire day. But it's like that's just from their perspective. I mean, it might take longer for us. So I'm hoping that I definitely will say I think Security Breach compared to with Secret of the Mimic, I definitely think Secret of the Mimic is going to be pretty scary, and I'm very excited for it.
Yep, same here. I'm definitely excited to see how the story is gonna play out. I might do some stuff about it myself. Well, I did play Security Breach, I just never finished it.
I got all the achievements from Security Breach.
Did you? Wow.
Yeah. Honestly, it kind of sucks that when Ruin came out, there wasn't any achievements to add to it. But I mean, I'm not really complaining that much because there's a lot of parts of the game that's pretty hard to try to get some of the collectibles, so I'm not necessarily complaining that much.
Yeah, I remember I made it to like the parts in the service area, and that's when I just remember like getting jump scared over and over by the endos, and I was like, all right, I quit. Like I never made it past the parts in the service area.
Yeah, I think it's called the Endo Warehouse. I don't blame you. That part took me a couple of tries.
I mean, yeah, there's just so many of them you have to deal with.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to say before we wrap things up?
Well, all I can say is that I am excited to see like where the story is like going to go, and if like we're gonna like get teased for like a new game or something like that, or maybe like some sort of like Fredbear's game or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I will admit that when it comes to Secret of the Mimic, especially with what we're being told that it's supposed to be the prequel before everything, I am interested to see that is the next FNAF game that comes out after Secret of the Mimic. Is it going to be a sequel from Ruin, so we see what happens to Cassie as well as Roxy and the Mimic? Or is it going to be a continuous sequel that takes place after Secret of the Mimic that could maybe clarify some things while also telling its own story that is at least original to where people can be unpredictable. And like with the Mimic, Secret of the Mimic, I am genuinely hoping that it does well with explaining some things because there are some people that don't even read the books, so that just play FNAF for the fun of it. So hopefully this game will at least be easy enough for people to kind of follow to where it's not too hard to try to figure it out. I mean, obviously it's going to make some connections to the books, but hopefully it'll at least be not that difficult.
Hang on a second, my battery's about. All right.
All right. I believe that is everything.
Yep, I'm definitely excited to like play this myself because yeah, I did complete FNAF 1. I did play the Steam version. I got started playing FNAF 3 recently, and I'm gonna try and finish that before Secret of the Mimic gets released. I
That
did
one's
play
my
Help Wanted as
favorite.
well, so yeah, I'm gonna try and finish those games before Secret of the Mimic gets released.
All right. Yeah, like I said, I'm excited.
Yeah, I got like some FNAF games to finish before Secret of the Mimic gets released.
Yeah. All right, I think that about wraps it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, this was andyware 309. Here's a link to his channel. Be sure to be sure to tell me what you guys think about Secret of the Mimic, and hopefully, as I've said, that this game will live up to the expectations. I still have some small doubts, but I'm at least gonna stay hopeful. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Andyware, say goodbye.
Well, it's you can call me Sergeant Andy as well if you want,
Oh,
but all
Sergeant
right,
Andy.
it's all good, bro. All right,
Yep.
take care. All right, take care, guys.
All right. See you guys later. Bye bye.